What is going on, everyone? Welcome in to this week's episode of Around the ACC with DP. As always, I'm your host, Dalton Pence. This show, part of the Cardinal Sports Zone podcast network, along with the original CSZ podcast, Live with 55. And I can't tell you enough how much I appreciate you all for tuning in weekly. Thank you to all of our sponsors of the OG CSZ pod, Live with 55, and the site as a whole. If you or someone you know wants to become a sponsor of the show, be sure to reach out at Jeremy Wallman or myself on Twitter. A lot of stuff to discuss on today's show. Coming to you solo today. No guest for this week's edition, but nonetheless, there is a lot of stuff to cover. Not a lot of time to do so. The first episode where we will tackle both basketball and football. Yes, the Cardinals played their first exhibition game on Monday. Hold on, okay, Terrence Edwards just made another three while I was recording that. It was so much fun. It was really nice to see Louisville win an exhibition game in blowout fashion. You think these things should be givens, but over the past couple of years, that's obviously shown not to be the case. But there's a lot of excitement. Chat, if you all are excited about Louisville basketball, dropping L's up in the chat right now. I hope everyone is doing fine on this Friday afternoon, I guess you would say. So the way we're going to break this down on the show, we're going to start with basketball, discuss sort of my record prediction, how I feel Louisville is going to do in conference play. Is Louisville a top 5 team in the ACC? Well, you'll figure it out when I deliver my top 5 ACC preseason rankings with a little small justification for each selection. We won't go too far into the rankings. We won't talk about, below 5, but we will discuss 1 through 5. We'll then go to the football side of things. Louisville Friday night kickoff, also known as tonight, up in Chestnut Hill. They'll take on the Boston College Eagles. Both teams 4-3 coming into the matchup. And truthfully, y'all, both of these teams need to get this win. They need to sort of try to revitalize the season, especially for the Louisville Cardinals. We'll talk a little bit about that matchup, the keys to the game, and much more. But let's start on the basketball side. Louisville opened up not technically, but they opened up play of the season with the first exhibition against the Young Harris Mountain Lions. They had a blowout victory there, over 100 points scored. It felt like a billion three-pointers, which is such a breath of fresh air. And to see the team hustle, to hear Pat Kelsey talk the way he did after the game, the attention to detail with it just being an exhibition game, it's so much different than hearing unnamed coach say that you can't win off talent alone against Kentucky Wesleyan. But we're not going to keep bringing that up, or are we? Well, it depends on how petty you are, but I'm fine either way. You do whatever you want to do. Louisville will officially start the season in a little over a week. November 4th is the season opener against Morehead State. And if you haven't heard already, the next game against Tennessee is a whiteout. Louisville football is on a bye. The Cardinals host the Volunteers on November 9th, the 12th ranked Tennessee Volunteers coming to the Derby City. And it's really challenging to predict the record for this team. First of all, it's hard to predict a record at all. It's almost like, there's huge deviations in the win totals, depending on who you talk to. Some think that this team's a 500 squad. Others think that they're going to win upwards of 20 games, maybe even closer to 25. It's a huge polarizing difference. And I think a lot of this is because you have a brand new head coach that still has yet to prove himself at the Power 5 level. You have 13 new scholarship players that have not played for Louisville so far. And it's really just challenging to get a grasp on things. Now, if you know me, you know that I'm bullish on this team. I think that Pat Kelsey's work in the transfer portal was admirable. I was a huge fan of the players that he brought in They might not necessarily have the name recognition of other players like John L. Davis or Omar Ballo, but truthfully, you brought in some really quality guys. Kason Pryor, Chucky Hepburn, Terrence Edwards Jr., Corin Johnson, Noah Waterman, you name it. You needed depth because Pat Kelsey runs a system to where you substitute a lot, and you did that. I feel really good about how Louisville addressed the roster this season. Now, another thing is I feel like the skill sets that Louisville brought in, three-point shooters, versatile defenders, athletic wings, stretch big men, they all sort of fit the puzzle that Pat Kelsey's playing style leads to. You know, that I mean, it's like Alabama light. You know, this is not disrespectful at all. Don't take this that way because it's going to sound that way, but I promise I mean it in a complimentary way. It's like someone asking, "Can I have a Nate Oates?" No, we've got Nate Oates at home. And Pat Kelsey is literally, I feel like, the rising Nate Oates, head coach that utilizes fast play, the pace of play, the possession, three-point shots, offensive rebounding, moving the ball, getting out in transition. It's very Alabama-esque. You're going to score a lot of points. You're possibly going to give up a lot of points too because you allow so many possessions because you're scoring and shooting the ball fast. So I say all that to kind of wrap things up in this way. I am one of those people that believe that this team is closer to 25 wins than they will be 500. In fact, my record for the season, preseason record prediction, is 21-10. That's pretty good for a first-year head coach that's never coached in the ACC. Pretty good. Now, the only thing that could change that would be this is factoring in 2 wins out of the 3 games in the battle for Atlantis. Let's say they only win 1. Well, then you're down to 20-11. Regardless, I think with the strength of schedule, with the opportunity to build up your resume in the net rankings, this is going to be a team that's going to be able to maybe lose double-digit games and still get into the NCAA tournament, which I do believe that they will. I think that this team gets back into the big dance for the first time, technically, since 2019. Could have been 2020, but obviously COVID had different plans. I have said that I believe that this team is a round of 32 squad, so basically by default, that would mean that Louisville would have to pick up their first tournament win since 2017, and it really, really saddens me to think that our last tournament win was when Donovan Mitchell was a member of the Louisville Cardinals. That just highlights how bad this, let's call it, almost a decade. Damn. Man, I'm starting to make myself feel sad, but can't be sad for long. Pat Kelsey's going to turn this thing around, baby. So, conference, we'll talk about record here in a second. NCAA tournament appearance, round of 32 appearance is what I think Louisville gets to, 21-10 overall record. What does that mean in conference play? Well, first you have to see the non-conference schedule for Louisville is absolutely stupid. It's stupid. You've got Tennessee, the second game of the year. You've got the Battle for Atlantis where you're going to play Indiana. You've got some other solid schools. You've got Mississippi in the SEC, ACC Challenge. You've got at Kentucky. It's not necessarily going to be easy. You do have Duke. You host Duke in early December as well. So 13 new players. It's going to take Louisville some time to mesh. Look, they're going to have to mesh sooner rather than later because they can't really afford to go dig themselves into too large of a hole by losing early on because this non-con schedule, it's brutal. But I do think Louisville holds their own. I think that Louisville's going to lose 3 non-conference games. So that puts them at 13-7 in conference play. Now, I'm going to read you for reference because this isn't always the case, but last year, here were the records in conference play of the top 5 teams. It kind of gives you a little bit of a basis. North Carolina was first. They had a 17-3 conference record. Duke was second with 15-5. Virginia 13-7. They were in third. Pitt 12-8 in fourth. Wake Forest, Clemson, Syracuse all tied for fifth. Wake Forest got the nod at 11-9. The year before that, it was much, much closer. So 13-7, you might believe, could put you in the mix, but I think a lot of people have them on the fence. I've seen them as high as 3 in preseason rankings from college basketball analyst Kevin Sweeney. I've seen them as low as 9 and 10, depending on who you talk to. Even the ACC official preseason rankings have them a little bit lower. So is 13-7 good enough in my top 5 projections? Well, we're going to find out. Let's start with number 1. I think number 1 right now is pretty clear cut. It's the Duke Blue Devils. Cooper Flagg is likely at this point going to be, now barring something unknown or just a bad year, he's projected to be the number 1 overall draft pick. Tank for Cooper Flagg is a real phenomenon in NBA draft circles. He is one of the highly regarded prospects of the 2020s thus far. Not only him, because he's such a mismatch at 6'10", 6'11", that can do a little bit of everything, but you bring in some other freshmen, Kaman Malak, 5-star big man. Now, if I'm saying that wrong, forgive me, but Knopel, 4-star shooting guard, borderline 5-star. He's a guy that Louisville got on an official visit, if you all remember, and ended up going to Duke. Deadeye, marksman, shooter, really, really good. So you've got 3 good freshmen, but bringing back Tyrese Proctor, a veteran point guard on this squad, is going to give them a huge boost. And then you have some transfers. Sion James from Tulane. He's a guy that Louisville went after. You have Mason Gillis from Purdue. And then you also have, I'm forgetting the guy's name from Syracuse that transferred over. But John Shire's team should win the conference this year. The team that I think that could give them a run for their money is the second-ranked team. That is the North Carolina Tar Heels, because they brought back one of the Naismith National Player of the Year candidates, R.J. Davis. RJ averaged over 20 points a game last year. Anytime you have that type of a difference maker that has played so much high-level ACC basketball, it just helps that much more. Now, they've lost some pieces. Armando Bacot finally isn't playing in Chapel Hill after 32 years of playing for the Tar Heels. But they have some transfers that came in. Van Allen Lubin from Vanderbilt. If you haven't watched him play, he's really, really good. Really played well at the end of last season. Cade Tyson from Belmont is another good transfer. And then you got some really, really talented 5-star guys. Ian Jackson could be a one-and-done lottery pick. Drake Powell is another guy. So they're going to have a really talented team. It's going to be interesting to see how they mesh early on. But I would imagine by conference play, North Carolina is going to be looking pretty good. Thankfully for the Cardinals, well, I guess maybe not thankfully, depending on how long it takes Louisville to mesh. The Cardinals play Duke and North Carolina once each. They host them both, but it's early on. You have Duke December 8th. You have North Carolina January 1st. So a little bit challenging, right? But I guess to get them out of the way, you could look at that in a positive light. 3, 4, 5, maybe even 6 and 7. It's really based upon what your perception is of each team. I could see any of these teams rearranged in a variety of different ways. But number 3 for me are the Wake Forest Demon Deacons. I am a huge fan of Steve Forbes, even when he was back at East Tennessee State. Had some really good teams. And then how he's been able to sort of resurrect Wake Forest and how they've been pretty solid over the past couple of years. I've been a fan of what he's been able to do. And a lot of that is turning around the career of Hunter Salas, 5-star prospect who went to Gonzaga, didn't really see much of the court, went to Wake Forest, turned into a star overnight. And he's back. He's back. Wake Forest brings 3 of their top 5 scorers back. Cameron Hildreth, the guard, and then Efton Reed, the big man. Obviously, Louisville fans should know who Efton Reed is if you follow high school recruiting. So you bring those 3 guys back. If Steve Forbes is able to turn former 5-star Omaha, I think it's Billy from a I won't necessarily say a bust, but a player who's not able to figure it out to like a consistent contributor. Let's put it that way. If you're able to get the most out of him, Omaha Billy, top 10 player, went to Iowa State. Things just didn't really work out for him there. with TJ Otzelberger, and now he comes to Wake Forest, and if Steve Forbes is able to unlock that potential, then this Wake Forest team really can be good. But I'm a fan of the Demon Deacons. I think that they're going to be a really good squad. Number 4, we're starting to get pretty interesting. Number 4 for me is the Clemson Tigers. Brad Brownell's squad coming off of I think the best run in program history. They went to an Elite Eight. They do lose their top player in PJ Hall, but Chase Hunter, the point guard, was fantastic in ACC play last season. They bring him back. They bring back double machine Ian Shefflin, and then some key transfers. Boston College's Jaden Zachary, Cincy's Victor Lakin. It's going to help this Clemson squad, who needs a little bit of a talent upgrade, which they've gotten, and then bringing back the players that they have. I think number 4 and 5 is going to be pretty similar. Number 5, they made it. Louisville Cardinals, I have at number 5. Some will think that's a hot take. If you feel so inclined, if Louisville doesn't make it into the top 5, find this video here in about 5 months if you have no life, and tell me I'm wrong. And if you do, reevaluate your priorities, because it's a little bit weird just to have a haha gotcha moment. But I think Louisville's a top 5 ACC team. I think that they're going to work through some of the chemistry issues, some of the defensive issues through the non-conference slate. I think that this team will start to mesh by the end of January. I can see them going on a run throughout the duration of February, even though they're on the road more than they are not in that month. I do believe that Louisville is going to have a really good stretch. I just buy into this roster. I buy into what Pat Kelsey's system is. You wonder whether or not it can work at the Power 5. It's worked at high levels. Just once again, look at Alabama. Alabama has been really, really good. So I think Louisville is going to be right there at number 5. Virginia might have been in the hunt, but losing Tony Bennett like they did, I can't put them there. You've got some other squads, maybe Miami, although Miami was just really not good last year. So I don't really know how to look into that. It was pretty weird, but nonetheless, I do think that Louisville is a top 5 team, and we're going to hopefully reaffirm that as we go through the duration of the season. Louisville's basketball season will, I guess, continue. They have an exhibition game against Spalding this upcoming Monday. They'll open the season up the Monday following against Morehead State. We'll now transition over into football. The Cardinals have a game tonight, looking to bounce back off of the Miami loss. They are up in the Northeast. Boston College hosting the Louisville Cardinals. Both teams 4-3. Both teams looking to just get any bit of momentum into their respective locker rooms. Boston College comes into this game losers of 2 straight. So Virginia 24-14, and then Virginia Tech 42-21. Louisville is a 7.5-point favorite when I looked at it against Boston College. I do think that Louisville wins this game. I think it's going to be a little bit closer for comfort, or a little bit too close for comfort, but ultimately I think Louisville gets back into the win column. 2 reasons why I believe that is. Number 1, Boston College has had a huge issue defending the run. Regardless of who's running the football, whether it's Isaac Brown, Kewan Brown, Duke Watson, Don Chaney, I think that Louisville is going to be able to set the tone at the line of scrimmage. This was a Boston College team that early on, they were a top 15 rushing defense, and then over the past couple of weeks, they have just been bad, and a lot of that can be contributed to a bunch of defensive injuries that is hitting Boston College at the wrong time. So I think that Louisville's going to be able to establish the run, which in turn gives them the bread and butter. Their play action, passing offense has been fantastic. Tyler Shuck has been borderline elite. Ja'Cory Brooks has been elite, and I'm excited to see what this Louisville offense can do. Another thing is Boston College has a really, really, really bad turnover problem, and it's the weirdest thing because it's sort of just coming at the most inopportune times. But if Louisville's able to force some turnovers against Boston College, which really is something that they haven't been able to do in bulk this season, is force a lot of turnovers, but they've force their fair share is what I'm trying to say. So, keys to the game. Here's what I'm thinking. All right. Keys to the game, there's three of them. We'll give you three keys to the game before we get out here. Number one, get started early. The past 5 games, it's been bad. Louisville has given up a score on the first possession in each of the past 5 games. And with each week, Louisville still looks unprepared. It's got to change. You can't go up on the road in conference play on a Friday night where the Boston College fan base is better than it has been in years past because of Bill O'Brien coming to town, or coming to Boston College. He's staying in town from the New England Patriots, but he's coming to Boston College. You have to get started early. Offensively, you need to get into a rhythm. You need to make it to where Boston College has to try to get into a shootout to win this game, because Louisville's offense is going to have to score a ton of points. Number 2, you got to contain Thomas Castellanos. Louisville hasn't really had many answers for mobile quarterbacks. Castellanos hasn't ran as much lately as Bill O'Brien's trying to increase his pocket presence, but when plays break down, he has a great pulse on controlled chaos. He is great at improvising in the pocket, and Louisville's linebacking core has struggled mightily at being able to spy the quarterback. So it's going to be up to Ron English and Jeff Brom to devise the best game plan moving forward for the Cardinals in this game. What makes matters even more appealing for that statistic, Louisville needs to convert quarterback hurries and pressures into legitimate sacks. Boston College is 105th in the country coming into this week in sacks allowed. That's third worst in the ACC, 2.71 sacks allowed per game. Castellanos has struggled a lot because Boston College's offensive line has not given him much time. Louisville has to have a big game in the trenches on both sides of the football. And then number 3, limit the big plays. So far, Louisville hasn't been able to do that. Thomas Castellanos is 14th in the country in yards per completion, 14.14. What a weird... If you're a fan of the number 14, then you must love this statistic. He's 14th in the country in passing yards per completion with 14.14 yards per completion, which one of those weird numerical anomalies. But point in case, or case in point. I don't care. Whatever. If you're going to get on me for mixing up my words, go touch grass. Seek help. I'm just messing with y'all. Y'all know, I appreciate you all. Once again, I do want to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. That's what I say on Locked On Louisville. Be sure to check out Locked On Louisville, the daily show that I host. And be sure to check out all the great shows out there. Cardinal Sports Zone podcast on Sunday, Live with 55 on Friday nights. A lot of great stuff happening at Cardinal Sports Zone, let me tell you. But getting back to the point, Louisville does need to limit the big plays, because Boston College, if you're wanting to keep them in this game, you look back to 2022. Louisville was supposed to beat Boston College, but why didn't they? Because Zay Flowers caught like 3 passes for 130 yards. Now, thankfully, Lamar has Zay Flowers now, and he's not up in Boston College. But they've got some playmakers. They definitely do. Lewis Bond has been really good. They've got some playmakers. So a lot of it is going to be to getting going early on both sides of the football, limiting the big plays, getting after the quarterback. In other words, everything that we say every week, it's honestly like copy and paste the keys to the game. I don't know if y'all can hear that train horn outside my window. It feels like they're calling fans into Cardinal Stadium 30 minutes before kickoff. But yeah, I do think that Louisville wins this game. I think it's going to be close. I'm going to go 35. I'm going to go 35-31. What I've seen from the Louisville defense, until Ron English shows me more, it's going to be hard for me to predict a blowout win. I think Louisville's offense is going to get theirs. I think Thomas Castellanos is going to be the architect of a very controlled chaos level game plan and performance for the Boston College offense. So that is going to wrap up this week's episode of Around the ACC with DP. We will be back next week as we hopefully talk about a Louisville win. We'll preview the Clemson matchup next Saturday. We will maybe break down what happened in the Spalding exhibition game for the Louisville men's basketball team and much more. But until then, I'm Dalton Penn signing off. Be sure to check out all the shows